watershed.org.
Drought is a harsh reality for many communities across the country. While the recent rains have helped develop reservoirs, it's still important to save water and be more resilient to drought. Drought can negatively impact everything from agriculture to industry to household use. Conserving water in our homes is very important. Simple steps such as fixing leaks, taking shorter showers, and using low-flow fixtures can make a huge difference. Another way to prepare for drought is to replace lawns with drought-tolerant landscapes. Drought-tolerant landscapes are able to thrive with less water and can help lessen the amount of irrigation required. While water is all around us, we should not take it for granted. Working together as a community, we can make a real difference in our ability to withstand drought. By making small changes in our daily habits, we can conserve more water and be more drought resilient. For more information about your water, please visit www.rrwatershed.org.
Water is the most important thing in the world. In order for our planet to flourish, we need an abundance of water. Due to droughts throughout California, wildfires have occurred, scorching Sonoma County several times. The Russian River is 115 miles long, and the main stem begins at Lake Mendocino. It flows through Ukiah, down to Cloverdale, through Healdsburg, and out to the Pacific Ocean. The river is home to 63 species of fish and has 238 streams and creeks flowing out of it. The river is a place for fun and relaxation for locals and tourists alike, as well as a home and resource for many creatures. So how can you help to preserve this bit of natural beauty? Start by being aware of your water usage. Take shorter showers, fix leaking sinks, use recycled water to water your plants, or better yet, switch to a more drought-tolerant landscape. In order for people to enjoy our beautiful river, we need to keep it safe. Be sure to conserve water. For more information about your water, please visit www.rrwatershed.org.
We're going to open the General Government Committee called order at 9 o'clock. Okay, could clerk do the roll call? Here.
Chair Hashak.
Here.
Supervisor Mulhern.
Here.
Okay, Mr. Burks, could you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so good morning, everyone. We're going to start off with agenda item 2A, which is discussion and possible action, including providing recommendations to staff and a referral to the Board of Supervisors recommending approval of the County of Mendocino Cannabis Department monthly update for June 2023. And we do have some changes in the Cannabis Department. One of them is moving the department to Ukiah and to be housed in the Planning and Building Department area. Okay, and certainly there are other changes, so I'll turn it over to the department.
Good morning, supervisors. Matt Goins, Senior Cannabis Planner. I hope you had a chance to look at the report. I'm guessing you did. I'm wondering if you have any specific topics or questions in that report for me.
Well, there was I don't personally, but there was MCA memo, and they had some comments and certainly noted some issues, that we could discuss. So I'm sure you've seen that memo. Some of the was information, how it's provided, and so I think that can be dealt with later. But we could go through that memo, some of the key points, But Supervisor Mulhern, I'll go to you and see if you had any specifics before we go that way.
Thank you very much. I
I think that my hunch was going to be right where this is June's report, but in July is where we're really expecting to see the action of the approvals. And so I feel like this is leading us right up into that. And so just checking in about how we're looking at processing everything, if we are on track, and maybe just talking a little bit about the expectations for moving everybody through the process as we had already spoken about month by month, and if we're on track. I think that'd be great.
Yeah, so looking over this, the letter here from MCA, I mean, just to start off by saying that we're happy to work with them in any way possible. We're open to collaboration and listening to new ideas and possible outcomes. With processing permits, we've moved through a fair amount, if not almost all of the phase 3s already. We have to get some inspections moving on those, but those are pretty much moved through. The renewals, we had a staff member, Casey, move through virtually all unassigned projects, and then found all the ones that already had site visits already accomplished years ago, and that didn't have any change. And there's about 100 of those renewals that we can start moving through immediately. So I think we're going to shift the narrative a little bit and move towards processing those renewals as quickly as possible.
And the question for the referrals that are on track, according to the timelines, we're doing all right with that.
The referrals are a little bit tricky, as noted in NCA's letter here, that, CDFW requested an additional time to do the reviews, so it went from 30 days to 45 days, which isn't a huge deal, but we're trying to figure out what happens at the end of that 45 days, and we haven't heard anything. I don't have an update for that yet. We're kind of just thinking about moving through the process. If we heard back from them and we don't see any egregious water course issues or, anything like that, then we would just move it forward. But as far as, we'll be moving through them.
Yeah, and then it seems like, the 30-day was, if they weren't done within 30 days, then they get moved through. They get processed.
Yeah,
If
that's kind of
there's
what we're
no
leaning.
comment from CDFW, but now we're talking 45 days.
Yeah, they asked for that extension, and we want to accommodate as much as possible with the,
Yeah, certainly. Okay, and then the referral screening tool that's being used to refer those to CDFW, certainly we had a lot of talk about it last summer, and is there anything that you can share about that tool or any refinement?
I would say that since I've only been here for 4 weeks, my initial response is I haven't had a whole lot of time to review that. Although the time that I have had, I've noticed that we tend to make the process a little onerous. I think that we do a little more than we need to at the moment, which I'm trying to change into a simpler, a less of a checklist, a less of a concern. There's no reason to make mountains out of molehills. If they're not there, there's no issues. Let's move them through. So that's kind of the narrative I'm pushing for right now.
Okay. And what percent do you think actually get referred to CDFW? Is
Could you
there
repeat that?
is there a percent of the applicants that get referred to CDFW? Do we have a kind of a general idea?
Most, it seems like. It seems like most get referred to CDFW when maybe they not need to. But it seems that CDFW came up with that tool, and making changes to that, we're going to have to get buy-off on them, support from them to make any changes.
Right.
Major changes, I suppose.
Yeah, and that was the discussion we had last summer was, was the tool as effective as possible? And CDFW was at the table there.
Yeah.
So anyway, okay, maybe MCA might have a comment on that. And then Appendix G, and the whole process with the state. Is there any update that we have from working with the state?
Kind of. Look forward to it. There is an update for the Appendix G. So it just appears that the DCC, so the county is not going to be processing Appendix Gs, from what I understand. We're not going to be moving through those Appendix Gs. But it's not any huge consolation to the applicants, but any reports that were done or finalized, any CEQA determinations, stuff like that, all that will be moved through to DCC or to our contractors to be used for the individual sites to process them. But that's about all the information I have with the Appendix Gs.
Okay. And then with the Appendix Gs and, the state and the EIR, is there any update, maybe it's a county council question, about any update with the EIR process and any timelines associated with that?
Charlotte Scott, Assistant County Counsel. I do not have an update. I know there has, as you know, been dialogue with the state, and I believe we're, deferring to the state to announce any position they take. But I believe, we will wait and see. Obviously, there's continued discussions as needed when issues arise.
Okay, I see Jared Schwass.
Hi, Jared Schwartz, Deputy County Counsel. I do have a meeting with the state this Wednesday, so hopefully I can get some sort of update at that point.
Okay, and that's to discuss the EIR and timelines, or do you know
it's a general meeting we have, and is to talk about our partnership, which would include the EIR and status updates on that.
Okay, thank you. So then there is a question about the training materials that they're still being developed with LACO's assistance.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Right in the middle of that process right now.
And those training materials are used for the
Policies,
lead
procedures,
consultants,
all that, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And then the LEAP grant. Okay. So any update on the audit? I see that is August 4th still the date that it will be finished for the LEAP audit?
I'm a little hazy on the LEAP stuff. I haven't been laying a lot of hands on that. That's been Sarah McBurney's sort of wheelhouse at the moment, so I won't be able to talk a whole lot about it, unfortunately.
Okay. Deputy CEO Dunnicliff?
Steve Dunnicliff, Interim Cannabis Director as well at this point. And so staff have been working very hard on the LEAP grant, compiling information that they received from, are you able to hear me?
Could you pull the microphone closer?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. So Steve Dunnicliff, staff have been working very hard on compiling information for the LEAP grant. We believe it's going to be pushed down to the wire, but that we'll have the response that the state needs by the deadline.
Okay, very good. And the deadline is August 4th?
Yes.
Okay, good. And the LJGP, is there a similar timeline, or is that?
So LJGP, it's my understanding that we don't have a specific date at this point. We've been working closely with the state, and I believe that at this point we're waiting for information from the Department of Finance. It's my understanding that we have provided them with the information that they're looking for. We can provide a more detailed update on that later if you'd like.
Okay, thank you. And then with the time studies, is there any update on time studies for applications and also renewals?
There could be. I would not call it a fair representation of what we've done recently with the changes and the shifts in the department, so I would ask for a little more time before we actually gave a better timeline for that.
Okay. All right. Anything else you want to add from the department?
Not at the moment, no.
Okay. Supervisor? All right, so we'll go to public comment.
Good morning, supervisors, county staff. Michael Katz, Executive Director for the Mendocino Cannabis Alliance. Definitely just want to start out by saying we appreciate the efforts of Matt and Sarah and the department to continue engaging with us. I think what we're seeing, and this is a function of the transition probably, and there has been a lot of additional staff turnover, as we're not seeing a lot of specifics in a lot of areas. And we understand that those will come, but there are certain things that we would like to see try to get addressed sooner than later. We've definitely heard additional issues about the Excella implementation and struggles that people are having. I know the department is planning to provide more communications about that, but there's a lot of confusion and consternation among operators about how that system is or is not working and how that impacts their not just applications, but also renewals. And if there's a way to, continue focusing on the streamlining and development of that program. We are curious, we're glad to see the issuance of CCBLs, curious how those numbers break down in the different groups of people who would be receiving them, and looking forward to seeing them move more quickly forward. The SSHR screening tool was something that, as you recall, we did discuss with the ad hoc of you and Supervisor McGorty. There was agreement at the time that it could be further refined, and the stakeholder community has a lot of opinions as to how that could be done efficiently and effectively. So we would be open to engaging in that process immediately, like whenever we can sit down and say, here's what should be changed. On the renewals, it would be great to just get timelines of how different groups of applications are going to be addressed. And then, obviously, with the Appendix G, hopefully our recommendations can be communicated by Mr. Schwass to DCC, and we're happy to participate in any conversations about that as well. There's a lot of moving pieces with the grant funding and the allowable uses and how that intersects with Appendix G, LJAGP, and LEEP. So, we're happy to chart that out. We're definitely looking forward to seeing the training materials when they're available. And we look forward to seeing the time study. A lot of the numbers that we're looking at right now that we'll talk about later are based on numbers that are inaccurate or have not been updated. So we're still kind of in a little bit of an unknowing place as to what these efficiencies are going to actually wind up being. And I'm sure the following comments will have some more to say, but I appreciate the conversation and look forward to the department's responses. Thank you.
Right. So just to go over any comments from the department about the CELA, for applications and renewals?
Yeah, we have a couple things. One is this week we're planning on getting out some help to the Cananote and to the website as to how to move through as an applicant, as an agent. That way there's less confusion out there. There seems to be some small hiccups and some operator error, but that's no fault of their own. It's kind of a difficult process to learn. The other one is we have a round 2 coming up, and we're trying to collect data as to what we need for the funding for the round 2 for the Excel updates. So we're working on that right now, and hopefully we can get that implemented soon. I don't have a date for that. I'd say in the next 3 months, somewhere in there, to get the round 2 moving and get the process going for that.
Okay. And then the question about the screening tool, and last summer that Angela Liebenberg from CDFW met with us and was certainly willing to meet again about refining that tool along with stakeholders and the department. I don't think that meeting ever happened, And if you think it would be useful to further refine that tool, if we're, the percentage that are getting referred is very high right now, it seems like we could at least look at it and see if there's any, efficiencies we can create. So, and I would certainly help set up that meeting.
I believe Laura met with Angela already, but I would also like to meet with Angela before moving forward, just to get some clarification on what they're thinking and how they want to move forward.
Uh-huh. Okay, and you'll keep MCA and stakeholders in the loop too?
Absolutely.
And me.
Good morning, Scott Ward, Road to Valley. Good morning, board members, staff. Laura met with CDFW regarding the sensitive species and habitat review for one of my clients. Angela did not know about the tree removal affidavit. She had not been clued in on that, so it was a complete surprise to her. One of my clients had had a less than 3 acre timber conversion in an area was not for cannabis cultivation, for other purposes. So that was quite a surprise to her, and it took quite a while, almost 2 months, to get through the process, and I still don't know the final result of that meeting with Elora and Angela and how it relates to my client. So CDFW was caught unawares as they did not know about the tree removal affidavit. And so maybe better communication would be in order.
Okay.
Good morning, Corinne Powell. I'm going to go through the report with the questions that I had. I don't think they've been asked before, but if they have, I'll just sort of brush over those. I am curious to know, the monthly reports from the department come out at least a week or so in advance of the end of the month or in advance of a meeting. And I'm curious to know how the data from the remainder of a month is accounted for. So perhaps we can get a reply on that, because it may skew things that are happening. We may not have an accurate understanding of how things are accumulated. And in the department priorities listings, in the planning column, we've got the timeline issues with DCC for renewals, but apparently Phase 3 applications are prioritized more highly than renewals that are current with the state's annual provisionals. And I'm wondering really why that is, why new applications coming in are given higher priority than the folks who have been compliant and involved in the program for years. In the breakdown of MCD issues licensed with DCC annual, there are 11. Are those all cultivation annuals now, or are there other licenses included in that? And in the next paragraph down, annual MCD license renewals applies to the issued licenses above. Renewals pending, waiting review by staff. There's 86 of those listed, and I'm kind of wondering if those are still part of Phase 1, 2, or if those are folks who are eligible for renewals without DCC problems associated. Sorry, there's a few more here. As pertaining to the waivers that we all scrambled to file, I'm wondering, since the department's indicated that all the waivers in the queue have been addressed so that there are none, how people who have not received any communication regarding their waiver status will be informed, and if there's any methodology in how people have been denied or not. You've talked
Those are
about
LEAP waivers?
timelines.
Corinne?
Yeah.
Those are LEAP waivers.
all waivers that were submitted. That's what I'm concerned with. I'm curious, are the chief planner and the senior planner not included in the planning group that you've listed here as staff included currently? That's enough for now. Thank you very
All right.
much.
Thank you. Okay. Did you want to address those?
Just what I can remember as fast as I could write it down.
Yeah, well.
There's a few
okay.
things.
The numbers for the month.
Yeah, the numbers for the month, I'm not sure how to answer that because I'm,
The numbers that were included in the agenda for today are the numbers from June, which is why I asked about when we would be. So we're always a month behind in the reporting, essentially, a lot like the supervisor's reports. It-
From when the report is issued until, the end of the month, there's work going on, there is data. I'm just wondering when that gets put back, or if that goes into the next report.
So, the reporting for July will be in the August report, so it's always a month behind. And then there were legal requirements that we processed the Phase 3 applications. So those were the two items that I noted.
thanks for that. I appreciate it. The phase, I mean, I can tell you that the phase 3, like Mo said, was legal stuff, and it was not that many, so we can move through those much quicker than we could the rest of the renewals. And then the waivers, I'm going to have to get more specifics on that. I couldn't answer that right now.
Okay. And then there's a number of annual MCD license renewals at 80, renewals pending at 86, waiting for review by staff. The question was, what is the status of those? Why are they pending?
There were quite a few, I believe the previous individuals were saying that we should move through these as needed. So there were a lot that were unassigned, and then once they get assigned, then we'll move through them. And I don't know that that's panned out very well. So the new directive will be to get everything under somebody's purview to review, so we can move through them a little bit faster, so they're not waiting. You got four-leaf planners who are moving through these things really fast, and our planners are starting to move through it with the new process that we have. So we're hoping to change a few things here in the next, again, I asked for just a little bit more time so we can get some better numbers under our belts here with the new process.
And then with the staffing levels, there was a question about the chief planner versus the senior planner. And those positions are filled.
Well, the senior planner position is filled.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know about the other positions yet.
Yeah. Okay. Corinne, does that answer your question?
I suppose it is for today what's available. Thank you.
Okay.
Good morning, everybody. Hannah Nelson. First off, it is always an opportunity to see improvements and better processes as new staff come on. And all indications are that the current leadership is very happy to be engaged and look for further efficiencies. There's always going to be a time of transition, and for us on the end of having been here from the beginning or before the beginning, it's frustrating but understandable. There's always a glow of optimism and hope, and I personally will maintain that as long as possible. There are a few areas where I hope that we can focus, and that particularly in this next month, we can really see some concerted, detailed progress that has been made. Acela has been one of those challenges, and I also understand that the IT staff is limited, and there's limitations on contracts and how much it costs to make changes and corrections and improvements, and I understand the distinction between the initial phase 1 and phase 2, but I'm hoping that even if funds need to be redirected in some way, that the resources are given to the department to have the tools, because it's such a major shift. And I know that applicants and agents have had a very maddening experience with the new program, and every program adoption has glitches, so it's not that. But there are real technical problems that need to be addressed, so I'm hoping that the resources can be directed in that way. You know, the applicants and agents are very used to Acela, but the way that this Acela program has been designed specifically is in a tedious and time-consuming process, and then to add on to it some technical glitches where certain pulled-down items aren't even able to be pulled out, you know, just various stuff, adds to the frustration. So again, that's an issue that I hope is addressed. Another one is separate from the new round of funding that will be applied for LEAP, which I understand Ms. McBurney is going to be turning her attention to after the audit is done, and separate from the LJGAP issue in the direct grants there, or the pending direct grants and modifications, there is consistently the issue of restarting LEAP verification process, and it's ratcheted up, and I think I mentioned this last time as well, to a heightened importance, because the state has been issuing notifications to people who are not locally verified that their state waiver, even though they meet all other eligibility requirements for their state fee waiver, cannot be granted because they have run out of money for that pot, and they're only funding those state fee waivers for those that have been locally verified. So separate from all these other LEAP and LJGP issues, this is something that I continue to really request that it's a priority, because what may save some of our local businesses is they're eligible in all other respects for the state fee waiver, but they're not able to get the money, even though they've been approved for the fee waiver, because the state ran out for a pot that are not locally verified. So,
And the fee waiver is due to equity eligibility?
yes, so
Okay.
there's separate criteria at the state level than there are at the local level, and they have been already processed, deemed eligible under new criteria of the state. It changed in the past year and a half, and they've gone through the process, gotten re-verified at the state level, but there's no funding unless they've also been verified at the local level. And because there was a suspension, and prior to the suspension, there was a period of time where Elevate or MCD lost a lot of people's stuff who had submitted verification requests, so it's just kind of a black hole. So that's another area that I hope that will get specific attention. The SSHR refinement tool, I think, is an important one to look at. I know that Chantal and I, and certainly Supervisor Hashak, you're well aware of this. And Angela was very willing to look at that, and had in fact agreed that there were certain things right off the bat that she understood could be changed. But separately from that, I think it is important to get some clarification, whether it's through county counsel's office or somewhere else, about this 35 days, 45 days, what is going to be the process here. And I think that the situation has significantly changed now that we do have an EIR underway, that there is a guarantee that site-specific reviews are going to be done. So perhaps county counsel's office can revisit the issue in light of those developments. So I encourage us to put that on the agenda for next month and really have it dug in a little bit more as to what we're going to do there, because it is one of those areas that are stuck right now in terms of people's, whether it's their renewals or their initial annual approvals or denials. And I just do want to commend, I mean, I think that it's a shame that we've lost so much staff again at MCD, but the staff that's there is very dedicated and they're really working hard. And I have seen them go through quite a bit of effort to help people in every way they can. We're just in this perilous moment in time where changes, again, are happening. With respect to Canna notes, yay that there are Canna notes, and it's understandable that because of these transitions, there's not immediately specific information in some categories, but I think it would really be helpful if we can get at least information about when the information will be available. When people have been waiting and there's a dearth of information, all kinds of speculation, all kinds of nervousness, and an erosion in the faith of the process and even the willingness to follow rules and regulations and promptly respond. It's just really difficult. So I hope that there's an eye towards giving specifics and specific follow-up when there isn't the specifics available. When are we going to hear about this? What is the follow-up? Additionally, I think that everything that can be done, and especially after the move, I think it's the intention that there will be more staff available to answer phones. It's just kind of a black hole when you call, and it's really hard, and I understand the low staffing. Quite frankly, the same thing happens at PBS, so I'm not sure that that's going to help much, but I've suggested some kind of a easy app or online program where you can schedule a 15-minute or 10-minute, real live person communication, because the other thing that happens if you leave a message is somebody might call back, but people are busy farming, and it's really helpful to schedule a specific time. So, and then it will be helpful as the department and this leadership finds its legs and changes processes and refines things and makes things more efficient, to give us all an update in terms of that Gantt chart, that, the changes of what the last big changes that were under John's leadership, any changes there, so that everybody has the same roadmap, essentially. Let's see, I do think that the EIR update and anything on that and whether it's on track doesn't really need to wait for a conversation with the state, because that's the county's contractor at this point, LACO. And so I think that it's appropriate, perhaps, I'm not talking about how the mechanics are working between the state and the local partnership, but just the EIR itself. It's not inappropriate to ask LACO to come in and give a direct report. It's understandable if staff doesn't understand, but why not? So there's some accountability, and that we don't wind up, even though we all feel like, oh, phew, we have a little bit more time before the end of provisional licensing, that's going to come upon us quickly, and we don't want to find out that things aren't as far enough along. So if we keep on top of it as we go along, I think that would be, and I'll be done. Thank you for the extra time. Bye-bye.
Thank you. So, let's see. There's quite a bit there to unwrap. So first of all, the ordinance changes, we did the phase 1 of the ordinance changes a few months ago, and I think when I've talked to county council that we're looking at early September, or at the next GGC meeting, late August, we'll probably set a date in September to really have a special meeting for looking at the changes to any further changes to the ordinance. And so it seemed like the last time that with the special day, it worked well, and there was a good amount of time to really work through the issues that we're trying to deal with in the phase 1 changes. There's a lot of changes to the department, and I think that the direction has taken a 180-degree turn, and it really on a good track. And so I really appreciate staff and all you're doing, and I think that the county's committed to making sure that the department is successful. Okay. Let's see. The local verification, I think that will happen with once we get through the audit, and then we'll start back on that process, right? And the Gantt roadmap, I think that is a good idea to, once we get new numbers about how long it will be to actually process applications and renewals, it'll be a good idea to share that, if we have a revised Gantt chart, to make sure that we're all in agreement with where we are. Yes.
Thanks. Matt Goins, Senior Cannabis Planner. We actually are working on that chart right now. We were trying to find one that would work for what we want, and so we have it, and we're starting to plug in numbers. We started doing that before Sarah left for vacation, so we're actively working on that.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Okay. Let's see, we have online comment from phone number ending in 8120. Lily, bring up the first online comment. Okay. If you're online, you can start talking.
Hello, good morning. Can I be heard?
Yes.
Hi, this is Susan Tibbin, Lovingly and Legally, MCA Policy Committee. Casey, thank you. Casey's stellar job in quickly processing renewals is really heartening, as is the suggestion of a time study. However, the fees and projected 20 hours for each renewal really begs the question. As a person who has experience in city bureaucratic process, my question is, why is a renewal with no changes or modifications taking almost half a 40-hour work week? If a renewal is checked box for no modifications, could we please streamline this sort of renewal as opposed to a more time-consuming renewal with modifications? We understand the county's position of cost recovery. However, we are ultimately all in this together, as is borne out by the weekly increase of for sale properties in all surrounding counties. So please, let's adjust fees to actually represent the amount of work a no change checkbox warrants versus the more complex modified renewal. For many of us who've hung on, a few extra hundreds of dollars may not seem like much, but it's money that we just don't have anymore. And we really want to contribute. A little bit of something is better than a lot of nothing. So please adjust fees to fairly represent the actual amount of hours so that we survive, because ultimately our survival is tied to the fiscal and social health of our communities. And a big, big thank you for the newer people, particularly who are willing to take on the difficult job of streamlining things. And we hope that the time study will not be something far in the future. We'd like to see that fast-tracked again so that these renewal fees reflect fairly the amount of hours for no modifications versus modifications. Thank you very much.
Well, and Susan, I think that your comments are appropriate for item 2B, and that's something that we will certainly discuss in a few minutes. So going to the department.
Matt Goins, Senior Cannabis Planner. Those inspections, those timelines also include inspections and the amount of time that it takes to input things into Excella, which may not be apparent to everyone, but they're not everything transferred over from Trackit and other places, so we have to spend a fair amount of time putting data into Excel right now, so that eats into time. And the next round of fee modifications will include the new time study.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other comments online? No. All right. Any other comments from the floor? Seeing none. Let's see, I guess, do we have any motion to accept this report?
I move that we accept the report.
Second. Okay, call the question.
Chair Hashak,
Yes.
Supervisor Mulhern,
Yes.
motion carries unanimously.
Okay, so now we're moving on to item 2B, which is discussion and possible action regarding requests that staff include a 5-year renewal cycle for cannabis cultivation permits as part of the future General Government Committee Cannabis Ordinance Update item. That's sponsored by myself. And so really the idea is to, instead of having an annual renewal, it's to get rid of that bureaucratic step. If everything's looking good, if people don't have violations, if they're in good standing, and just increase it to a 5-year renewal. We talked about it last General Government Committee, and I guess this is the official process for adopting it as a recommendation to go to the full board. Right? Does the department have any comments on this?
Just a few, I suppose. Just something to be aware of more than anything else. We've gone through 5 years already, and I realized it would be a different process from this point in the next 5 years. But we've seen a lot of modifications and changes in the last 5 years. I suppose it's not the end of the world that we'd have to wait till the end of the 5 years to see when those changes happen, but if they make changes, we won't know when it happened. If they made them, they'd have to contact us, or we'd have to wait and find out. If they don't contact us, we will have to wait and find out when those modifications were made, and then timelines and applicable who did what when would be a little bit difficult to determine. So other than that, staff doesn't have, that's not true. DCC also has an annual licensure that they go through as well. So we want to make sure that we're kind of lining up with them. Just if they make changes or policies that could affect us, we would want to make sure that we're in line with those policies.
So that's something that could happen through communication with DCC, that they could notify us if they see that something got changed.
That's correct, yeah. That's true.
And in talking with John Ford, who's the Director of Planning and Building in Humboldt County, and I had heard that Humboldt had gone to a 5-year renewal, but in my communications with Mr. Ford, that it sounds like they are doing annual, kind of a quick review of the permit, a site visit, and to make sure that people are on track. So he thought that that was still a necessary component of it. But if we have, I guess I'm looking for direction from staff to figure out how to make this work so that we don't have people out there. We want to make sure that people are in good standing who have a 5-year renewal. And if you have any ideas on that, and you don't have to tell me right now. You can come. I think you understand what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I see the
decrease the bureaucratic parts of this program and to make it more streamlined, but to make sure that people are still in good standing.
Since this is a relatively new concept at the moment for me, I'd want to mow it over for a few days just to figure out what the pros and cons would be of that 5-year.
Does Mr. Swass have a comment?
Yeah, I do. Like you were mentioning, Supervisor Haschak, is there should be some sort of mechanism in place to ensure that the applicants are still in good standing on a yearly basis. And I know part of emphasis to implement this 5-year renewal cycle is to streamline the process. And if we're doing if the department's doing annual site inspections, I guess the department would have to look at it, whether that would save department time or not, if to accomplish the goal of increasing it to a 5-year renewal cycle, or just keeping it at a year renewal cycle. If there has to be a mechanism built in place to make sure that there's good standing every year.
And that mechanism might need to be in place because of our MND, or is there a reason in the ordinance that we'd have to keep that in place?
Well, as Matt was mentioning, I believe that you would want to make sure that someone's in good standing on a yearly basis, because if there are changes that say year one, and then there's no mechanism to ensure good standing for 5 years, the department wouldn't know about those changes for a 5-year period.
Yeah. So we're just trying to figure out the best way to do this. Okay. Supervisor Mulherin.
Thank you. I supported the 5-year timeline versus the 3-year timeline when this item was first brought up. And just frankly, the item calls for farms that have had no changes and are in good standing to be able to renew every 5 years. And the frankly part comes in where code enforcement is involved. And if a farm expands, if a farm is not following the rules, then their neighbors are going to use code enforcement procedure. And certainly code enforcement and the department speak regularly and check in. And I think there's your flag, right? I mean, there is a process in place and a mechanism in place. And we should certainly expect and understand that our cannabis cultivators are small business operators, and they want to do the right thing, and they will let us know when they change their farm. And if not, we have an opportunity through any code enforcement actions that we need to take. That's my opinion on the 5-year.
Yeah. All right. So I guess what I'm hearing is that, there are ways, there's code enforcement, but there's also the DCC, which will let us know if there are changes. And I think I've heard concerns about some of those farms that are out there that, might go 5 years, and, the change might happen, but we got to figure out a way to streamline this process. And so, the goal, we're leaving it up to you, really. But the idea is to go to the 5-year renewals and make sure that people are staying in compliance. Okay? So let's go to public comment on this.
Scott Ward, Redwood Valley. Applicants should have the presumption of compliance. They've gone through the process, they've paid their fees, they've gotten their permit, they've been approved by the state and the county. I still feel, with the comment from county council and possibly staff, that there's still that taint of, oh my goodness, they were outlaws, they might be outlaws again and do something wrong. We need to watch them every year. We got to keep an eye on them. That's wrong. It's a legal product, it's a legal business. They got their license, they're compliant. Give them a 5-year review period. To do anything less, you're treating them differently than any other business license holder in the county. Car dealers, bars, restaurants, factories. They all have the presumption of compliance. Who's to say a factory doesn't add a couple of pieces of equipment and extra outlets? Are you going to go annual inspection for Microfor to see if they've done anything wrong? Are you going to go out to Redwood Forest Products to see if they've added a new loader building, if they've done anything wrong? They've got a business license. Give these folks a break and treat them like everybody else. Thank you.
Corinne Powell, in considering the length of time a permit is valid, I would request that annual renewals, which have been the practice, be considered the same in terms of duration as administrative permits, minor use permits. I don't know why those licenses have much longer tenures than an annual. I would request that they be considered alike, and that whatever time frame is allotted to an administrative permit is available to somebody who has been permitted on an annual basis. I don't see where those time frames should be any different. Thank you.
Good morning, Hannah Nelson. I think that there's a difference between no changes and some changes. And I encourage us to go one level deeper and not just look at whether there are no changes, which I think I agree, of course, with the supervisors that have recommended this action and the comments made by you, Supervisor Mulhern, as well as Scott Ward. But some changes, I mean, these are farms, and if it does not relate to the MND or violate any provision of the ordinance or endanger health and safety, I still think that some changes should be allowed with a longer renewal period. And talking about the state renewal takes between 5 and 10 minutes to accomplish. Actually, this year it took about 15 minutes for most of my clients because they now have to input, like every year they choose one, to highlight one item to input a little bit more information, but it's check boxes. Separately, they deal with scientific amendments. So if there are any changes, you go through the scientific amendment process. The two issues are separated in terms of renewal of your license versus changes that you might do. And I suggest that we go through that and look at not only separating out those issues so that we can effectively engage in a lengthier renewal process or streamline whatever renewal process there is, but also treat the types of changes really with a fine-tooth comb as to whether they really rise to the level of needing to be examined, and to what extent. I think that random audits are a reasonable also way to check on people, but just as Scott said, no other, and Supervisor Mulholland, no other business is being looked at and presumed to, oh, we want to keep them on track. No, you have enforcement mechanisms. If there's a problem, you can enforce, or someone can enforce, a neighbor or anybody can report. And in fact, they should be able to declare, which is what the state does, that they are adhering to those items. They, even with modifications, they can declare and show their work through site plans that they are meeting the requirements, whether it's setbacks or anything else. So it really doesn't need to be as complicated as this. But regardless, I think that we need to look at how are we doing any changes on a farm if they are consistent with the ordinance? What is that process? And can we have a list of what rises to the level of a modification application, or if it's triggering some other process for renewal or whatever? I think we need to examine that and re-examine it in light of the streamlining that's happened, in light of what is actually required by the MND and the ordinance itself, and take a close look at that. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Those seem like very positive comments, and I hope the department is taking heed of those.
Good morning, Michael Katz, Executive Director for the Mendocino Cannabis Alliance. Really want to commend Hannah for her comments, and Scott as well, those and supervisors for bringing this idea. I think there is a pathway forward, and it's just working out what those details are. And it is, as usual, more nuanced than we may like, but we are willing to do the work to get to where it needs to be. I do want to point out raise the question around the number of projected renewals annually from the documentation, which seems to show and right now there's 833 active applications, but moving forward with the idea that only 450 of those will be having renewals moving forward. So that's a significant number of attrition. I'm wondering if that's based on anything or, honestly, obviously, we would like to see as many people as possible continue in the program and would suggest that we are projecting as such. And then if unfortunate circumstances occur and people have to, for whatever reason, we address it at that time, but that we make sure that we're projecting appropriately for the number of operators in the program and those who may join as well with the 20 phase 3 operators now moving forward. And then finally, obviously, as was mentioned before, we're looking forward to seeing the time study and identifying what actual time does it take to manage these renewals and keeping costs tied to those costs specifically, which obviously state law. So appreciate that and look forward to finding out the results of what it will actually take to do this, not just with the ordinances changes that have undergone already, but the ones that we will pick up coming forward in September. Thank you.
So with the renewal projection worksheet, and we're dealing with 833 applicants, and but it's projected the working number is 450, right? How did we come up, or is that left over from previous administration, or what's the thought process going on?
The thought process is to be safe than sorry. So we could assume that they could all make it through, or going to make it through, or going to continue to cultivate, but we don't know that for certain. And we just had to land on a number, and we just decided that, we took half. I forget exactly how the number came about, but that was just a rough number to keep us safe. Yeah.
So with if we go to the 5-year plan and we have the 1.16 round, number of planners needed, and that is for 450. If we keep 833 or 850 in the program, we could double that more or less, that need, right?
Correct.
Okay, and then if we do some of the ordinance changes and streamline this process, that maybe we can cut that number down too. Okay? Any further comments? Okay, Paul Hansberry?
Good morning. Yes, Paul Hansberry, lovingly and legally. I think this is great that it's been introduced for this 5-year program, as stated by a number of people. A lot can happen in 5 years. We have no idea. My crystal ball was broken in the '89 earthquake in San Francisco, but it seems like we're in an effort to streamline and make things simpler, reduce staff burden, and reduce staff, that we're even complicating things even more. My point of view is that there's a number of things that come into play. Number one is the renewal or modification fee of $733. Let's see, if you divide that by 20, which is what, 20 hours is what they're saying, that's $36.66 an hour. That's half a work week to check a box to say that it's there have been no changes. I understand modifications take more time to review, to go over the site plan, et cetera, but we have a very expensive satellite system for checking things. We have the word of the people that are actually trying to do the right thing. And so the presumption of innocence comes into play here, but the fee needs to be adjusted, I would think. But there is a reduction. I applaud this, that for 5 years, if you only have to pay this $733 every 5 years, that's $146.66 a year. instead of $733.33 a year. I have another business license that only costs me $40 a year that I pay every year. There's a penalty if I'm late. And I'm just wondering why we don't just simply do that. Am I missing some of the nuances? I don't understand why we can't just simply go to a system that has worked for every other industry for so long. I mean, do we need to increase the other licenses to $146 a year? If I'm missing something, I really would like to know what I am missing. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Paul. So, yeah, we are trying to streamline this process, and so we're trying to get those fees down for people and, follow the applicable MND and everything else that we have to, and I think it is going to be nuanced. So, any further comments online?
Yeah, next on the line is Michelle Schott.
Michelle?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. This is a little bit of a new system. So I just want to I support this 5-year renewal or some other form of extending the licensure. And if the issue is that you need to collect a fee every year, I think that's perfectly reasonable. We pay for a business license for other things every year, and I want to support that. But to streamline this whole process to do it very similarly to how the state does it, you attest that you're in compliance, you pay your yearly fee, and you move on. And I think that is in line with what makes sense as far as a business license, because we are going to a business license model, and I appreciate the work. It should still require that if there are any significant changes, those need to be reported to the department, and documentation should ensue to support that. So to make a long story short, I support this 5-year or some other mechanism of the renewal process. And it could still have a fee every year, but it should not be a huge fee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other online comments? All right. Anyone else from the floor? All right, going back to the committee. Do we have a motion?
I move that we direct staff to bring forward an item for streamlining with a 5-year renewal cycle for cannabis cultivation permits. And I could add just an annual small fee. I'm not sure what else you want to add.
Well, I think that, yeah, that's proper direction, and that, the cannabis department has to figure out how it works out, and some of the guidelines and everything that we've talked about. Okay. Is that clear as a motion?
I think to the BOS, and it doesn't need to include details, correct? Like we with the direction given today, staff can bring an item to the Board of Supervisors for a 5-year renewal cycle, and I think that can be all it says. Atlas or Charlotte or Steve.
Mr. Goins.
Somebody.
Matt?
Yeah.
So if I could, Steve Dunnicliffe, Deputy CEO, a couple of very minor points. One, just for a point of order, I believe from the committee it's a request. I don't know if direction can be given, and I believe that we want to aim this at County Council's office. My understanding is that County Council's office is lead on the streamlined ordinance, although there's been close coordination with comment from the Cannabis Department as to what should be in that. So, my input.
And I guess that it could also be included in the overall changes to the second round of the ordinance changes, right?
Charlotte Scott, Assistant County Counsel. Yes, I think we would recommend any referral on this issue be part of an overall package on other issues that this committee resolves through. And I know staff with County Council are planning to meet on discussing recommendations to bring to this committee related to changes. I know that there'll be more changes that this committee would like to see, and I think then an overall package could be presented to the Board of Supervisors for.
Right, so this is a recommendation to staff to do the work, and then we're going to include it in this overall package after September and the round 2 changes to the ordinance.
So Charlotte Scott, Assistant County Counsel, perhaps as the item is I think as you have in the item, perhaps a direction to a request of staff to include this 5-year renewal cycle as part of the future update to the cannabis ordinance.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds like a motion. I'll second it. Okay, call the question.
Supervisor Mulhern?
Yes.
Chair Hashak?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
All right. Good job on that. Thank you. Okay, approval of minutes of June 26, 2023, regular meeting.
Move approval.
Second. Any public comment? Okay. Any other public comment? No. Just on this item. On the minutes. Okay. All right, so call the question.
Chair Hashak?
Yes.
Supervisor Mulhern?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, item 3B, public expression. Okay.
Good morning, supervisors, county staff. Michael Katz, Executive Director, the Mendocino Cannabis Alliance. Related to the next round of ordinance changes, one of the things that was so effective about the last round was the substantial engagement leading up to the various meetings. So wanting to make sure that there's clear direction provided to county council and staff to work with the stakeholder community in advance of those meetings so that there's enough time to review considerations, provide responses, and do some of that back and forth before we come to the meeting so that we can streamline that approach and already have some ideas about what might be the best approach to the different suggestions being made. So understanding that if we're looking at a September special meeting, might be beneficial for staff to meet with stakeholders in August so that we do have time to get to that point instead of just trying to push everything into 1 or 2 weeks right before we set that. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I agree that when we did this last time, that was a successful formula for making sure that people got, their voices heard, and we had an effective, changes to the ordinance. So I think that what I'm hearing from the department is that they're into it, and hopefully, and county council also. Okay, very good.
Lots of smiles. Thanks, everyone.
Hannah Nelson, just to reiterate what Michael said, last time stakeholders spent more than 100 hours, I think, about 100 hours. So we really are not just, we know that staff is willing to engage in the input. We really appreciate that and look forward to being productive again. but I cannot emphasize enough the advance part of it and the allowing sufficient time. Because, and especially with Labor Day weekend and other things, you know, just really the advance part is what I wanted to reiterate. Thank you.
I was on that committee. It was hundreds of hours, excruciating, exhausting, particularly considering the people I was meeting with. So this is off topic, but kind of similar. I had brought up at the last full board meeting, amnesty for building permits as a way to bring people into the fold that are getting letters from the assessor's office. And I'm looking to both of your folks' support, and we can get one more vote. Maybe we can start the right to financial ship of the county by granting a limited, maybe one-year amnesty program for people that can come in, get permits so their properties can be assessed fully. Thank you.
Well, as you know, that I'm working on a agenda item along that line. Okay, any other comments?
None online.
Okay, very good. So any announcements? All right, seeing none, we'll adjourn the meeting at 10:15. Thank you, everybody.